going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. It's your boy, Dead on Dave, and it's Saturday, and that means it's Top 5 Day. And I've got a really cool Top 5 today. I'm really excited about it. I think you guys are going to dig it too. Should be a lot of fun, and it is the Top 5 Managers of All Time. And I didn't need to be on video for this because I got a lot of pictures. We got a lot of cool things to look at. I'm really excited about this one. I probably put the most work into this video than I have on anything else that I've done. And I put a lot of work in all my videos, but I mean, I really tried to make this one a little bit special and really cool because while you think of a manager, it may not have a huge role, but the reality is there are plenty of points in history where you can look at the placement of a star with a manager as the turning point for both good and bad in a wrestler's career. So arguably, for some wrestlers, not all of course, good management or bad management can be paramount in what happens to them for the rest of their professional wrestling careers. And it's also interesting about how many wrestlers can later go on to be amazing managers. It's just, there's no limitations. It's a way for the everyday guy, and not just old wrestlers, to become part of the sport, become part of the pageantry, the gimmick. It's quite incredible. I've always had an affinity for managers. I absolutely love them. I love what they do. I love their roles. And when they're good, they're great. And we're going to talk about some of the greatest of all time. I did a top 5. We do have a top 5, and they are in order. So this isn't one of those where, put them in any order. I am giving them a strict order. You can make an argument for any of these guys to be number one. I think the argument will always come down to 2, but we'll see. I also have honorable mentions, which is the first thing we're going to get to, which should be a lot of fun. The honorable mentions. And this is the first photo gallery that I put together. These are all the honorable mentions that you're going to be seeing. They're just kind of conflubbered here. But we're going to start with Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette is my first honorable mention on this list. And some people will think that, Jim Cornette's one of the greatest managers of all time. What are you doing, Dave? Are you crazy? How is he not in the... Here's my thing about Cornette. He annoyed me too much to be. You'll see a Cornette picture here. They're all 5 of my honorable mentions are in this slideshow, so don't freak out. Jim Cornette annoyed me so much where I couldn't get past a lot of his things. There's Jimmy. There's James E. Cornette. I couldn't get past some of the things that he did because he was so damn annoying. When Jim Cornette just started being Jim Cornette and not this stupid-ass gimmick with the racket and all that stuff. I hated that stuff when he was jumping around being an ass. But when he was just talking, when he would do these segments on Raw that he was doing for a while about what was wrong with the industry, I found him fascinating. I found him compelling. James E. Cornette might be one of the most wholeheartedly disliked personalities and people within the wrestling business of all time. And that probably means he's done a lot of things right. He says a lot of things that many people agree with, but he's also very petty. He holds a lot of grudges, and it makes it very hard for people to kind of really elevate him to maybe where he should be. He's done enough in his career. He's managed some very great attractions. Vader being, will always be number one in my mind. But Yokozuna, he was very important to Yokozuna's career. There's a lot. James E. Cornette did so much. And hell, in the territory days, he's God. So it's a very interesting thing. But it's more about what he's done later on in his life that has kind of made me shy away from James E. Cornette. J.J. Dillon, you've seen his picture in this, and probably some people are losing their minds over the fact that James J. Dillon is not in this list. Well, here's a problem. I love JJ. I love JJ. Absolutely love him. I think he was always fantastic in what he did. Here's my problem with him. He is most well known for managing the Four Horsemen and Ric Flair. I don't think he was Ric Flair's greatest manager. So it's hard for me. I mean, honestly, he may not even be his second greatest manager. That's the thing. And I'll get into that a little bit more when I talk about who is Ric Flair's greatest manager, because this man is on the list. I won't tell you where, but he is on the list. So it's very interesting to me that Flair is not a guy who needed a manager anyway. So that's also another important thing to take away from it. He didn't need a manager. Ric Flair could talk on his own, because that's an important thing about managers too, is a lot of the times they're put with guys who can't get over on their own on the mic, who can't cut these amazing promos. So you give them good managers who can be their mouthpiece. JJ didn't need to be the mouthpiece of Ric Flair. He may have needed to be the mouthpiece of the Four Horsemen, but Flair really could fill that role too. You know, Arn Anderson, very underrated on the mic. He had great mic skills too as well. But the rest of the guys, Ole couldn't talk. You know, Tully Blanchard couldn't really talk. So it's just JJ did serve a role, but I just don't know how big of a role he served. Captain Lou, as you see right now, anybody who played the real-life version of Super Mario, that works for me. That's enough. And look, Captain Lou Albano is so important with the wrestling industry because he was a crossover character. He was a man who bridged the gap between all forms of media and the WWE, and he did it before anyone else. You know, the things that Lou did with the Samoans, and it's incredible. It just cannot be understated, his place in wrestling history. That doesn't mean that he should be in the absolute top 5. He's easily in the top 10. He's great. He was a character. He was another one, though. He was so friggin' annoying at times. His voice was so grating, especially when he would go heel. When he went fully heel, it was kind of hard to watch at times. So, it is what it is. God, I'm hoping that the shuffling on this slideshow gets a little bit better, because there's a lot of pictures in here, but they're not hitting the way that I want them to. Maybe I'll restart the damn thing here. We'll start here and we'll take the shuffle off and it'll just go through. Yeah, that's what we'll do. That's what we'll do. So now you should be able to get to see all the pictures now from this point on. Yeah, you're going to still see some that I've already shuffled through, but oh well. I'm glad she's on the screen now, because Sunny is also in this, and 2 females are going to end out the honorable mentions. Look, Sunny, I absolutely love it. I actually was going to put her in the top 5. I almost put her in the top 5. And then I kind of realized, no. As good of a manager she was for the Smoking Guns and the Godwins for a short period of time, of course, and the Body Donnas, she was just more of a celebrity within the WWE. Her role got much bigger when she was doing some ring announce work, when she was just doing some interviews at times. She just became this larger-than-life person, this figure that was, quite frankly, just stunning to look at. She was amazing at what she did. She could speak. She was a female Shawn Michaels in a lot of ways. I would have loved to see that pairing, by the way. I would have loved them to see they have babies, too. They would have pretty babies, probably. I don't know. It's just quite interesting when you think about her role and the things that she was able to accomplish. It's really too bad that she is such a destructive person that she can't keep herself together to be still associated with wrestling. Now the last I've heard about Sunny is she's basically doing "You Want to See Me Nude" shows on the internet. You pay her some money and she'll show you that pussy that everybody wanted to see. Here's the problem. Who really wants to see it now? I mean, she's in her 40s and Father Time has not been fantastic to her. Let's be nice about that, But it is what it is. Her place in history is cemented. She's a Hall of Famer. She helped resurrect the Road Warriors. That's perfect. She helped bring them back and gave them the Road Warriors 2000. It helped bring them back with more attitude and edge, and she looked great in those costumes. And the 5th and final person on the honorable mention list is the person you see right now, Miss Elizabeth. Firmly, really, brought in to be the new manager of the Macho Man. Everyone was surprised to see that was her role. But she did a very good job. She didn't have to say a lot. She was always very instrumental. Why she is so high on my list, and probably the sixth person, if I had to go top six, she might be that sixth person. And I'll tell you why. It's how she reinvented herself in a lot of ways. And people are going to be like, what are you talking about? She just walked down an aisle. That might be true. But when she went to WCW and she became part of the NWO, she became an intriguing character even before all the stuff in the NWO, because the things she did with Ric Flair, the storyline where where Ric Flair and Miss Elizabeth took all of Macho Man's money, and that was hysterical. And she was such an important part of that storyline, obviously. But her association with Ric Flair is something that elevates her for me. She became synonymous for, God, it seems like 4 or 5 years with Ric Flair, walking him down constantly. It just seems like she was there for a while. Her and Woman, and then her and Woman became this valet tag team, basically. Not an in-ring tag team, but they were always together. Nancy Benoit, Woman. Those two together became so important. They were always with Hulk Hogan. They were always with Macho Man. They were always with Ric Flair. They were always with them in different ways. And it was just really cool to see. Woman would eventually break apart, and then she kind of stayed with Chris and the Four Horsemen. But still, it was a lot of fun to see them together and see that what they were able to do. And even though she didn't say a lot in her career, some of your first memories, if you're my age, of wrestling is Miss Elizabeth being held on Randy Savage's shoulder. Or their wedding, the most real feeling wedding. And I know that they were really married, but that wedding was so emotional and so amazing. And when he asked her to marry him, and oh yeah, I mean it was so good. She was our Princess Di. And that's what she was going for. That was the whole idea. She was Princess Di of the wrestling industry, and it's so sad that both her and Randy are dead. And, same with Captain Lou. And I did include everybody who has passed. I did include a memorial photo. I'm sure you've seen it by now. And it's really, really good. I love this picture of Liz because it's so more provocative than most of her photos, especially early on. I loved it. This is just classic Miss Elizabeth there. She's great. I love Miss Elizabeth. Rest in peace. So what do you think of my honorable mentions so far? I think it's a good way to start. But now, that was the appetizer. Let's get into the really real list here. Starting with number 5. That's not number 5. Number 5, the mouth of the South, Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart has done just about everything you can do in wrestling. And I want to talk about something that people don't know first. I'm going to go through the list of names that he has managed, and it is a lengthy one, and it's quite amazing. But first, I want to talk about something that maybe not a lot of people know about Jimmy Hart. And if you watched Legends House, you're going to know it a little bit more. He's a very, very accomplished musician. He composed music for all these people. The Macho Man, Jimmy Snuka, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, the Rockers, the Hart Foundation, Crush, the Fabulous Rougeau Brothers, Dusty Rhodes, the Legion of Doom, Nasty Boys, Ted DiBiase, the Mountie, Hulk Hogan, the NWO Wolfpack. The NWO Wolfpack, that's a Jimmy Hart joint. Can you believe that? It's incredible. 3 count. Okay. He also composed themes for SummerSlam 1988, which later got used for Royal Rumble events, WrestleMania 6, and used for 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th. And, of course, let's not forget, he also gave us Shawn Michaels' Sexy Boy. All right? So, I mean, it's quite incredible when you think of the things that Jimmy Hart was able to do. And his list is about as good as it gets. You know, he managed Billy Graham, Ox Baker, Brutus Beefcake, Barbarian, Dino Bravo, for Christ's sake, King Kong Bundy, Earthquake, Paul Ellering. I mean, Paul Ellering, he managed Paul Ellering. I mean, come on, if you don't know who Paul Ellering is, go do your freaking homework, then come back and watch this video again. He managed Ric Flair, the Giant. The Giant, not Andre, no, the Giant. Paul White, the Big Show. Bret Hart, Honky Tonk Man, of course. Hulk Hogan. Probably the two he's most known for is Hulk Hogan and the Honky Tonk Man. So important to both of those guys' career. But it's just very interesting to think about the career that he had and the fact that you got a little guy with a friggin' megaphone could elicit so much response. And he would hit you with that friggin' megaphone. He would drive you nuts when you're watching the events. He was quite annoying, and that's what kind of drew me to him. But also probably keeps him from being higher on this list, for me at least. Other guys that he's Austin Idol, the Iron Sheik, Wild Bill Irwin, Gypsy Joe, Jim Neidhart. The Hart Dynasty, the first Hart Foundation. That was him. He's managed Jerry Lawler and Lex Luger and Ming, Bob Orton, Cowboy Bob Orton, Lanny Poffo. He managed Lanny Poffo, the great Lanny Poffo. Okay, I oversold that one. The Renegade, Rick Rude, one of the many managers of Rick Rude. He's not Rick Rude's greatest manager either. Randy Savage, Kevin Sullivan, Coco Beware, Mabel, Big Bubba, the Big Boss Man, Johnny Grunge, Greg the Hammer Valentine, Sting, AJ Styles, Lance Hoyt, Samoa Joe, Tyson Kidd, some of the newer guys, Heath Slater. These are all guys that he's managed, in recent years. It's incredible the stuff that he's done. He managed the Dungeon of Doom, the Faces of Fear, the First Family in both Memphis and WCW. The Funks, the Glamour Girls. He would go. A lot of managers wouldn't take on female clients. He did. The Hart Foundation, Money Inc., the Nasty Boys, Natural Disasters, the Naturals, the New York Dolls, Rhythm and Blues. It's just incredible the things that he would do. Jimmy Hart, easily entrenched as the number 5 and gatekeeper of this list. So what do you guys think of that? Number 4. Not only is she number 4, she is the greatest female manager of all time. And honestly, you can kind of make a case. Some people who are more eloquent with their words than I could probably make the case that Sherry Martel could be the greatest manager, period, of all time. She's done it all. She accomplished wrestler. Very accomplished wrestler. Won titles in every major organization that was afforded to her during her time. She's managed Dave Sullivan, Crush, Greg Valentine, Jake the Snake Roberts. That's something that didn't happen very long, and people forgot about that. Jeff Jarrett, Johnny Swinger, Kevin Sullivan, Lenny Lane, Marty Jannetty, Randy Savage, of course. That's one of the big ones. Randy Savage and Ric Flair, those are a couple big ones. Randy was very important to her. I think that was kind of a big one for her. When she took over his career, it changed the dynamic of who he was, because then he was the Macho King. And he had this evil queen, and she was such the opposite of Miss Elizabeth that it put new eyes on Randy Savage. It really did dictate where his career was, and it was just so interesting, and she was so interesting, and just, it was crazy. Rob Conway, Ric Flair, of course, just another one of those situations where you put these two together, and it's like, wow. Shane Douglas, Of course, Shawn Michaels. Maybe this is her greatest accomplishment on this list, is Shawn Michaels. When Shawn split from the Rockers, they knew that Shawn was going to be a star, but they weren't quite sure how to get him there. They knew his ring ability was good enough. They knew this cocky gimmick was cool, but they weren't quite sure on how to really make him pop at the fans. Well, luckily, they had somebody like Sherry Martel, because obviously a male manager was not going to get the job done. The logical choice at the time would have been to put him with Ted DiBiase, who was doing a lot of managing at that time. That would have been a really logical place to put him. I don't think it would have helped him. It wouldn't help him get over. Him being the playboy that he was, he needed a female manager. And he treated her like shit. It was great. She would let him on camera, like, he would throw her down at his feet and stuff. It got her over so hard with me. It was so great. It got him over. Holding the mirrors like in this picture. It was just so cool. It was so different. And she was a little bit softer. She didn't scream as much. She wasn't as crazy because that's not who she was supposed to be. It was just really cool. It was great, and it's probably one of the biggest reasons why Shawn Michaels is the star that he is. When you can transform multiple stars and especially shape the early career of a wrestler like Shawn Michaels, your legacy is cemented. It really is. The thing for her is people forget also that she sang the early version of Sexy Boy. That was her singing. And then it was changed to where he's like, I like my own voice better. And it makes more sense. She also managed Tatanka. Yee, 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 yee. Ted DiBiase, Terry Funk, Honky Tonk Man, Tracy Smothers, Zeus. And then, of course, when she got into the tag team division, the Heavenly Bodies and everything and whatever, but it was really Harlem Heat. And this is another thing for Sherry, Scary Sherry, Sensational Sherry, whatever you want to call her. Her being a manager for Harlem Heat showed that she was constantly evolving. And you put a loudmouth white woman with two brothers from Texas. Of course, they were not actually from Harlem, and it just kind of did things. It evoked different types of emotions. She really put them over, and it's sad that she died. She's just another one of those fantastic managers. You can really make a case that she's the greatest manager of all time. I don't think it's a good enough case because the next three are so damn good, but look what she did. Look at her career. Look at these pictures. They're amazing. They're absolutely amazing. Next, number 3. This is a man that is basically known for one single man. And normally that wouldn't be enough to get you on the list. However, when you are known for managing maybe the greatest superstar in the history of the business, for a lot of people, this man is. And without you, he doesn't get over. You definitely make your way onto this list and high on this list. So number 3, it is Percival Pringle, better known as, oh yes, Paul Bearer. Now, William Moody, as his real name is, he's been around for a long time. He did a lot of other things. He managed the Great Kabuki. If you don't know who the Great Kabuki is, go check him out. He's great. The Dingo Warrior, Blackjack Mulligan, the Assassin, the Executioner. He had other Coco Beware, Lex Luger, Mankind. Of course, we'll talk about that in a moment. Rick Rude, Vader. Steve Austin for a time. He's done a lot in the indies as Percival Pringle, but of course, when they made the change from Brother Love to Paul Bearer, because remember, Brother Love was also involved. I think he actually just introduced them for the first time after DiBiase did. When you've got a guy like The Undertaker, a gimmick that is just so bizarre and so strange, you need a manager equally as bizarre. That's a great picture right there of him and Rick Rude. My God. You need a manager who's equally as bizarre. And that's what Paul Bearer did. Paul Bearer was so strange, so creepy, and he had such a good speaking mentality. He could really manipulate crowds and evoke emotions, and it seemed like he really had control of The Undertaker, and that's what was so special. One of my favorite storylines is, and it's not for everybody, but for me, was the tale of the two Undertakers. When we had two Undertakers for a while, it's one of my favorite storylines because it was so friggin' crazy. And, $1 Million Man found The Undertaker after he was beaten by Yokozuna in a casket match. He found him and he brought him back. And Paul Bearer came down to try and see if he can get The Undertaker back with him. And he knew almost immediately that was not his Undertaker. And the storyline was so amazing. When Paul Bearer had the urn, he opened the top and the light went flashing throughout the entire arena, and then the real Undertaker shows up. Oh my God, does it get much better than that moment? It's something I'll always remember. The urns, the voice, and then of course the turn. His turn in '98 is one of the most important turns in history because at this point Undertaker had been around for a long time in WWE and he was very well established. A change needed to happen. And this, I think it was 97, my bad. 97, not 98. A change needed to happen for The Undertaker. A change needed to happen for the WWE. But what type of a change? Well, that change would come in the form of Kane. Oh, perfect timing. Paul Bearer became he became more Percy Pringle, if anything. He became more Percy Pringle when he started to manage Kane. The shrill, "Oh yes, my Undertaker," kind of went away. It was still there, but it was not in the same regard. He talked more real when he was talking with Kane and about Kane and introducing him. Some argue that he was a better manager for Kane than he was for The Undertaker because the character that he became when he took over for Kane, when he introduced Kane, it's just amazing. We're talking about two guys who had careers before their gimmicks as The Undertaker and Kane, did not get over, both Mean Mark and, of course, Dr. Isaac Yankem DDS couldn't get over. Their size and their athleticism was already there. It was on display. But their characters, when they became Kane and The Undertaker and managed by Paul Bearer, it's what made them great. And, Paul Bearer also, he managed Mankind. And all three of those guys kind of fall into the same category. The thing that Paul Bearer was able to bring to them. It was just quite impressive. It was awesome. He had an amazing career. And then coming back with The Undertaker was just awesome. That's the one difference between for probably Paul Bearer than anyone else on this list. He's on this list and as high as he is for that one era in which he was a manager. For those three guys, Kane, Undertaker, and Mankind, what he did for them, and most importantly, obviously, The Undertaker. That's why he's on the list. And it's a pretty cool thing, and it's unique. It's nobody else on this list is there for the reasons that Paul Bearer is. And he's easily one of the greatest managers of all time. Number 2. Here's where the controversy starts. Paul Heyman, number 2. Now look, I actually fought back and forth on this because Paul Heyman could easily be the number 1 manager of all time. In fact, some people out there are probably like, oh my God, what are you doing? Paul Heyman is the greatest manager of all time. And maybe he is. I think you could definitely make this fight Definitely, because he is probably the greatest talker of all time. He's probably uh, the most creative man in wrestling in the last 25 years. The fact is, people forget all the guys that he managed um, in, in the stable. He's responsible for probably one of the top two stables in history outside of the NWO, which quickly got stale. There's two other stables, and it's just so funny that it's these two guys that we talk about in three major categories: top manager of all time, top stables of all time, and top talkers of all time. The final two guys on this list are probably 1 and 2 on all three of them. The Dangerous Alliance. People completely forget about the Dangerous Alliance. It was an alliance against the man called Sting. That was the whole point. Getting rid of Sting. Let's get rid of Sting. And it was just amazing. I'm going to go through the entire list of people that Paul Heyman has managed because it's an impressive list. Let's go through this. 911, A-Train, Adrian Adonis, Arn Anderson, Austin Idol, Big Show, Bob Orton, Bobby Eaton. Beautiful Bobby Eaton. Give a little fucking love to Bobby Eaton, shall we? Brock Lesnar, of course. His gold ring, his defining client, Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar. Bubba Ray Dudley, Cesaro. Cesaro I want to talk about for a moment because it's just a shame that didn't work. And it's just because everyone was so excited when he became a Paul Heyman guy. Everyone was so excited, and then they went heel with it, and they went uber heel. You think that Cesaro cares about you? It was just so stupid. If they just would have left them together, just had them together, and just had Heyman be Heyman and not be evil, weaselly Heyman, it would have been fine. But it was that gimmick that they tried to put on him is what killed Cesaro's momentum, I believe at least. Charlie Haas, I know that doesn't really matter. CM Punk during his title reign, very big part of that was Paul Heyman, and that was a really cool thing. Curtis Axel, the Dark Patriot. People remember the Dark Patriot? Go Google that. That's cool. Devon Dudley, of course. Don Morocco. Paul Heyman managed Don Morocco, okay? Come on. The magnificent Don Morocco. Eddie Gilbert, Hardcore Holly. Heidenreich. Remember Heidenreich? Not too many people do. Superfly, Jimmy Snuka, Kurt Angle, of course. The big turn, the change in his career when he turned on Brock Lesnar and started representing Kurt Angle and the Big Show. That was really cool. Larry Zbyszko, Medusa, Mark Callis, Mark Calloway, Matt Morgan, Nathan Jones, Rey Mysterio. People forget that. Rhino, Rick Rude, Rob Van Dam, of course. Probably his first big solo client on his own, running ECW and everything. Ryback, that didn't work. Sabu, Shelton Benjamin, Steve Austin, Taz, Test, Tommy Dreamer, Tommy Rich. The stables and tag teams are just as impressive. The original Midnight Express, Dennis Condrey and Randy Rose. Look, these are names that you guys need to be. If you're big wrestling fans and you don't know some of these names, go Google them. Because I know a lot of people on here are a little bit younger. Like, I bet you Tony Barrasso, I guarantee he's 14 and he knows a lot of these guys because he's a big wrestling fanatic. And that's what you should do. You should definitely be looking at some of these old school stuff so you can appreciate the new stuff a little more. Or don't. Screw me. What do I know? I'm just a fat guy on a couch. The new Midnight Express, Jack Victory, when he teamed with Randy Rose. The Samoan SWAT team, I remember them. The Dangerous Alliance, of course. The new Dangerous Alliance, the ECW version. Eddie Gilbert, Jimmy Snuka, Don Morocco, and Dark Patriot. That was cool. Team Angle. The Dudley Boys, Rybaxel. Didn't work. Look, the reality is Paul Heyman's contribution to the wrestling industry will never be fully appreciated until long after his passing. He's another one of those guys like James E. Cornette that is so hated in so many circles. But here's the difference. between Paul Heyman and James Cornette. Paul Heyman has something that Cornette does not have, and that's like unyielding respect from almost everybody. You might not like some of the practices that Paul Heyman has done in his life, or the way that he has gotten into some of the business ventures that he has gotten into, but you have no choice but to respect what he's accomplished. Has anyone done less with more? Or, I'm sorry, excuse me, more with less than Paul Heyman? I mean, geez. Now later in his career, of course, he's the guy who's getting all the big guys and the easy meal tickets, whatever you want to call it. But he's earned it. He's earned it. And he probably should and could be the number one friggin' manager of all time. If this next man was not ever a manager. I think when you really look at it, there's only one guy who can be the greatest manager of all time, if for any reason he predates Paul Heyman and did everything Paul Heyman was able to do, but better and more funny. Of course, I'm talking about Bobby the Brain Heenan. Now, Bobby Heenan he's been out of the game, out of the wrestling game, and out of the wrestling picture in the spotlight for so long. People don't know who Bobby Heenan is as much as they probably should. Bobby Heenan is probably the greatest talker in wrestling history. Him and Paul Heyman are probably 1-2. Another great thing about Bobby Heenan is the fact that he probably headed the greatest stable of all time, the Heenan family. What was the second greatest stable of all time? Probably the Dangerous Alliance. Once again, him and Paul Heyman, 1-2. And they are also 1-2 in greatest manager of all time. He did everybody, man. He was just there for everybody. He was a wrestler. He wasn't a great wrestler, but he was a wrestler. He had that experience. He had a little bit of credibility. The Weasel, it was fantastic. It was fantastic. And he managed. This list is so impressive. Nick Bockwinkel. Think about Nick Bockwinkel, okay? Now, he's not going to get the respect. I guarantee most of you don't know who Nick Bockwinkel is. Go look up Nick Bockwinkel. Stop the tape right now. The tape. Oh, my God, I'm so old. And go look up Nick Bockwinkel. One of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Top 20 easily. Ray the Crippler Stevens. Angelo Poffo. The second greatest Poffo in the Poffo family. Lanny Poffo. Yeah, you had Lanny Jimmy Hart. Or whoever had Lanny. But guess what? The Brain had Angelo. The patriarch of the Poffo family. And of course, if you don't know who the greatest Poffo is all time, it's the Macho Man. Yeah, he was a Poffo. Some of you might not know that. Well, now you know. Bobby Duncan, Blackjack Lanza, Blackjack Mulligan, Adrian Adonis. I love that name. I always loved Adrian Adonis. I don't know. Big John Studd, King Kong Bundy, Andre the Giant. His work with Andre was so important. Heenan's work with Andre was so important because Andre could not talk. He could, but anybody want a peanut? He couldn't talk, and you couldn't understand a friggin' word he said. And Heenan was so smart in the way that he would manipulate the crowd to do whatever he wanted them to do when it came to Andre was amazing. He did the same thing with Ravishing Rick Rude. He really did. He helped Rude go to a new level of success. It was so weird because you would think that Rick Rude probably should have had a female valet, but at the same time, he didn't need it because Bobby Heenan would take off his robes because he was just in awe of the wonder that the Ravishing One was, as any female could have possibly been. He also managed Mr. Wonderful, Paul Orndorff, Harley Race, the Islanders, Haku and Tama, Hercules Hernandez, the Barbarian, Mr. Perfect. One of my favorite pairings of all time was Bobby Heenan and Mr. Perfect. They were so perfect together. The whole little faction, Perfect, Ric Flair, and Heenan, was so wonderful. It was so good. It was amazing. And even when Heenan was on commentary, because he's also probably one of the greatest commentators of all time. He's probably one of the greatest announcers who's ever lived as well. He's easily in the top 5 at that too. And by the way, Heyman, when he was announcer for SmackDown, he made a case for being one of the greatest announcers of all time. These guys just parallel each other. What made Heenan so great was the fact that he could have been a comedian. He could have been a professional speaker. He was just so good and so funny, so quick, so sharp. He was just absolutely amazing. And it's so sad to see current pictures of him now, but at least he's still with us, you know. High Chief Siva Afi, Red Rooster. Yes, they tried that hard to get that Red Rooster gimmick over. They did put him with the Brain. The Brain Busters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. The Brooklyn Brawler. Yes, that was the beauty of Heenan. He would manage jobbers. Who cares? Ric Flair. Look, I said earlier about James J. Dillon, why he didn't make the list is because he was not even the greatest manager that Ric Flair had. And it's because Ric Flair was managed by Bobby Heenan. It was fantastic. So important. So important. Heenan and Flair. Flair and Heenan. It's not fair to Flair. I loved it. Oh, my God. It was so great. Lex Luger, man. This was an interesting... Talk about an epic failure. When Lex Luger was brought in, he was brought in as the narcissist. One of the funny things about that was Bobby Heenan could not say the word. He kept calling him the narcissist. The narcissist. He kept calling him that. It was so funny to me. Go back and listen to it. It's hysterical. That one didn't work. It didn't work. So it didn't last very long. Nikita Volkov. Colt Cabana, yes. Jimmy Jacobs. Nigel McGuinness. CM Punk. Yeah, forget about that one too, huh, kids? Baron Von Raschke. A lot of these guys, like CM Punk and stuff, that was all earlier. Colt Cabana, because Brain did a lot of work in the Indies later on that people forget about. People forget about it. Ernie Ladd, the big cat. Ernie Ladd. Dick Warren, John Jumbo Bailey. Yeah, Heenan really loved working with the giants. Loved working with the big guys. Killer Carl Cox, Masked Superstar. What didn't Heenan do? I keep saying the wrong name sometimes, but Heenan and Heyman and Heyman. Finkel and Einhorn and Finkel. This is such a cool list to do, and it doesn't get any better than Bobby Heenan. He brought something to the table that nobody else was able to do. Hilarity, intelligence, fun. I would love to see that Survivor Series, by the way, the Dangerous Alliance versus the Heenan family. I'd love to see legendary members from each clique, faction, whatever, go 1-on-1 or 5-on-5, and as this case would be. Well, what great promos would be between Heenan and Heyman. My God, they'd tear each other apart. In their primes, of course. It would be amazing. So, Bobby Heenan, you are number 1 on this week's top 5. You're one of my favorites on the mic, managing, whatever. I miss Paul Heyman. God damn it. Bobby Heenan being a part of wrestling. I miss it. I really do. So, there it is. How did my list do? What did you think of my list? What's your top 5 managers of all time? Where did I miss the mark? Let me know. Make sure, as always, you like, subscribe, and share. And if you want to represent your Dead on Dave love, you can check out my merchandise on deadondave.spreadshirt.com. Get your Dead on Dave shirts now. And send me pictures. I'll put them on. It'll be fun. And remember, keep your Skypes open, kids, because you might be getting a call. In fact, I'll probably almost certainly be doing 5 random questions with somebody sometime tonight. So turn on that Skype. Add me if you have not added me yet. David Vancura, DAVID. There's my information. And make sure you add me, and I'll add you back. and I'll get you on for 5 random questions. So there's all my information. Make sure you get on Facebook, man. I don't got nearly enough people on my Facebook page. Twitter, if you have any questions, anything you want to hit me up with, Twitter at DeadOnDaveV, Spreadshirt.com, DeadOnDave. I mean, I'm everywhere. I'm blowing up, people. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Check out Joe Cronin's show. He went absolutely crazy last night on air. Make sure you check that out. Of course, my boy Tommy C. over Shot from the Point. You need your hockey fix. Check that stuff out as well. Grand Slam 87, Jeff Huffman, his channel, for all your video game news. Dave Rose did a dark show last night that went on apparently for like 17 hours, so you can check that out as well. All kinds of good stuff going on within the community. Make sure you're checking it all out and supporting, because that's important. We need to support each other. Thank you guys for joining me for this Top 5. We'll see you tomorrow for viewer questions. And if you have any more viewer questions and you don't want to go find last week's viewer questions to put your question in, go ahead and leave your viewer question as well as other Top 5 suggestions right here in the comment section below. We will see you next time right here on Dead on Dave Productions. Peace.